Hello and welcome to Ani Short Stories. I hope you enjoy this story. I'm going to try and upload a new story each day. The Ghostly Bride. The mist clung to the coastal air, wrapping the Isle of Wight in a veil of secrecy as Holly Arnold drove through the winding, narrow lanes. The further she ventured from the ferry port, the more the island seemed to withdraw into itself. The GPS screen blinked out, leaving Holly to navigate by instinct alone. Her destination, a forgotten village near the coast where an ancient church stood abandoned. The Church of St. Agnes, long whispered to be cursed, was said to harbour something far worse than the ravages of time, something vengeful. Holly's reasons for coming were personal. As a paranormal researcher, she had always been drawn to stories of restless spirits, but this case was different. Her great-grandmother, on her deathbed, had whispered a name, Amelia Blackwood. She spoke it with a mixture of fear and regret, as if invoking something dangerous. Amelia, Holly had learned, had been a bride who died tragically in 1912 on her wedding day in the very church Holly now sought. The tale of her death and subsequent hauntings had been passed down through generations on the island, but no one had ever uncovered the full story. Pulling up to the overgrown churchyard, Holly felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air. St. Agnes stood in eerie silence, its once proud spire leaning precariously. The iron gate groaned in protest as Holly pushed it open, the sound cutting through the stillness like a cry. Weeds and ivy choked the gravestones, many of them tilted and cracked. But it was the church itself that drew Holly's gaze, its darkened windows like the eyes of a watching predator. She entered cautiously, her footsteps echoing unnaturally in the hollow space. The interior was decrepit, pews rotting and the altar barely visible through the layers of dust. Yet, as Holly made her way further in, a strange tension began to build. It was as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting. She had studied the ghost stories before arriving, tales of the ghostly bride who roamed the church in her wedding gown, her veil stained with blood, her hollow eyes forever searching. Amelia Blackwood had been young, beautiful, and full of hope on the day she was to marry Captain Thomas Evers, a naval officer stationed nearby. But that hope had been snuffed out in a tragic accident, at least that was the official version. Holly knew better. Her research suggested that Amelia's death had been no accident. On her wedding day, a fire had broken out in the church, and in the chaos, Amelia had been trampled by the panicking crowd. But rumors hinted at something darker: jealousy, betrayal, perhaps even murder. As Holly approached the altar, she saw the remains of what must have been Amelia's wedding wreath, now a brittle, decayed relic lying beneath the shattered window. The air grew colder, and Holly's breath came in visible puffs. She wasn't alone. A soft sobbing echoed through the nave. Holly froze, her heart thudding in her chest. The sound was unmistakable. Someone, or something, was weeping. Gathering her courage, she turned towards the sound and saw her, the bride. Amelia Blackwood stood at the back of the church, her figure faint but unmistakable, clad in the tattered remains of her once beautiful gown. Her veil trailed behind her like a wisp of fog, and through it Holly glimpsed her face, a ghastly, pale visage twisted with sorrow and rage. Holly whispered, though she already knew the answer. The bride's form flickered like a candle in the wind, but her eyes dark, empty hollows fixed on Holly with a terrifying intensity. "You shouldn't have come." The voice was soft, barely more than a whisper, but it was filled with venom. Holly stood her ground, her breath shallow. "I came for answers, Amelia. I came to help you." Amelia's form flickered again, and in a heartbeat she was closer, her face inches from Holly's. The temperature plummeted, and Holly could feel the searing cold of the bride's presence seep into her bones. Amelia hissed. "They all said that, and they all lied." The church groaned. Holly's mind raced. "Who lied to you? Who is to blame for your death?" Amelia's face twisted further, her ghostly form convulsing as though racked by unseen pain. "All of them," she whispered. "All of them. My love, my family, my friends. They betrayed me." Holly's pulse quickened. There was more to the story, something Amelia needed to reveal. But the bride was fading, her form dissipating like mist in the dawn. Holly could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the spirit withdrawing, retreating into whatever haunted realm she occupied. Desperate, Holly blurted out, Tell me who, I can make it right." The silence stretched for what felt like hours, and then, faintly, Amelia's voice drifted back, barely audible. "Find the ring," and then she was gone. Holly stood in the empty church, her hands trembling. The air around her felt lighter, as if Amelia's departure had lifted some invisible weight, but the fear lingered. There was no question now Amelia Blackwood had been wronged, and she wanted revenge. But on whom? Holly's mind raced with possibilities. What was the significance of the ring? She spent hours combing the church, sifting through debris, but found nothing. Exhausted, she returned to her car as dusk began to fall, casting long shadows across the desolate graveyard. As she reached for her keys, something caught her eye, a glint of gold beneath the undergrowth by the church steps. Heart pounding, Holly crouched and brushed away the dirt, revealing a tarnished wedding band engraved with the initials A.B. and T.E. Amelia Blackwood and Thomas Evers. The moment her fingers touched the ring, the world shifted. The sky darkened unnaturally fast, and a sudden gust of wind howled through the churchyard. Holly's skin prickled, and she turned, only to see the bride standing once more at the entrance to the church, her eyes blazing with fury. "You found it." Amelia's voice was a guttural growl. Now you must see. Without warning, Holly was no longer in the graveyard. She was standing inside the church, but it was no longer in ruins. The air smelt of fresh flowers and candle wax, and the soft murmur of a gathering crowd filled her ears. A wedding was about to begin. Holly glanced around frantically. This was no vision. She was in the past, moments before Amelia's death. The doors of the church opened, and Amelia entered, radiant in her gown, her face glowing with happiness. But Holly could sense the tension, the unspoken secrets that rippled through the congregation. She scanned the crowd, looking for a clue, and then she saw him, Captain Thomas Evers, standing at the altar, his eyes filled not with love, but with cold, calculating malice. Holly's breath caught in her throat. Amelia had been right. This wasn't an accident. This was a betrayal. Before Holly could move, the church doors slammed shut with a deafening crash. The fire began, as it always had, flames leaping from the back of the church, ignited by an unseen hand. Panic ensued, but this time Holly was caught in it. The heat was unbearable, the smoke choking. She tried to reach Amelia, to scream a warning, but it was too late. In the chaos, she saw Captain Evers turn and slip out a side door, his face expressionless as his bride was trampled by the fleeing crowd. And then Holly was back in the present, gasping for air, the churchyard silent once more. The truth was clear. Amelia had been murdered by the very man she was to marry. He had planned the fire, orchestrated her death, and fled the scene. His betrayal had bound her to the church, trapped her in a never-ending loop of sorrow and rage. Holly clutched the ring tightly. Now she had the key to set Amelia free or to help her get her revenge. As the wind whispered through the graves, Holly knew her decision would haunt her forever. But she would make it. Holly's heart pounded as the realization sank in. She had found the truth. Amelia Blackwood had been betrayed, a life stolen by the very man who had sworn to love her. The weight of the discovery pressed heavily on Holly, and she knew that Amelia's spirit wouldn't rest until justice was served for vengeance. The ring in Holly's hand felt strangely warm now, pulsing with energy. She could feel Amelia's presence stronger than ever, not fading but intensifying. The bride's sorrow was palpable, but so too was her rage. The choice before Holly was clear, to bring peace to Amelia's tormented soul or to help her exact the revenge she had long been denied. The sky had darkened entirely, clouds swirling overhead in a furious storm. The air felt electric, charged with the supernatural presence of the ghostly bride. Holly knew she couldn't leave now, not without making a decision. She glanced down at the ring again. The engraving of Amelia's and Thomas' initials mocked her. How easy it must have been for him to trick Amelia, to stand at that altar with such cold intent, knowing he would never say his vows. The thought made Holly's stomach turn. Could she let this injustice go unpunished? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, jolting her from her thoughts. She pulled it out, surprised to see a message from an unknown number. "Leave the ring where you found it. You don't know what you're dealing with." She hadn't told anyone she was coming here. Who could know? Her hands shook as she typed back her response. "And who is this?" "Someone who has seen what happens when you get too close to the truth. Put the ring back, and walk away." Walk away. After everything she had learned? After seeing Amelia's pain, her suffering? She couldn't. No, she wouldn't. Whatever the warnings, Holly felt the deep sense of responsibility now. Amelia's story deserved to be told, and Thomas Evers needed to pay for what he had done. She stood in the churchyard, clutching the ring so tightly it bit into her palm. The wind howled, almost as if the island itself was trying to drive her away. But Holly planted her feet firmly. She had made up her mind. She marched back into the church, her flashlight sweeping across the debris and shadows. "Amelia," she called. "I know the truth now. You were betrayed. Murdered. I found the ring. Tell me what you want." The temperature in the church plummeted. Holly's breath came in clouds, her limbs numb from the cold, but she stood her ground. Slowly, the shadows in the far corner of the church stirred, coalescing into the familiar form of the bride. Amelia's figure was clearer now, less faded and more substantial. Her gown flowed around her like a mist, her veil trailing behind, but her face remained hidden in shadow. "You found the ring," Amelia whispered. "And now I can finally see." Holly swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" For a moment the air grew even colder, and Holly felt the weight of the bride's presence bearing down on her. Then, slowly, Amelia lifted her head, revealing her face. The hollow, black pits of her eyes bore into Holly's soul, and the anger in them was undeniable. "I want him to suffer," Amelia hissed. "The way I suffered. I want him to feel the fear, the betrayal, the agony of knowing that no one will come to save him." She had expected this, had known, deep down, that Amelia's thirst for vengeance would outweigh her desire for peace. But hearing it spoken aloud, feeling the raw emotion behind those words, made Holly's blood run cold. Amelia drifted closer, her gaze never leaving Holly's. "You have the ring. Through it, I can reach him. He thought he escaped, thought his sins were buried with me, but I am not finished. You can help me. Holly, you can bring him to me." Bring him to her? Captain Thomas Evers would be long dead by now. How could she possibly? And then it hit her. Amelia didn't mean Thomas. She meant his descendants, his bloodline. Holly had seen the records. Thomas had remarried after Amelia's death. He had lived a long, full life, had children, a legacy. That's who Amelia wanted. She wanted the ones who carried Thomas' name, the ones who shared his blood. "No," Holly whispered. "You can't do this. His descendants didn't hurt you. They weren't responsible. They carry his blood, they carry his guilt. He escaped justice, and so did they. You brought the ring to me. Holly, you made your choice." The ring in Holly's hand burned hot. It hit the stone floor with a sharp clang, the sound echoing through the empty church. The wind howled louder, and the walls groaned as if the building itself was protesting. Holly stepped back, panic rising in her chest. "Amelia, this isn't right. Revenge won't set you free. It'll only bind you here forever." Amelia's form wavered. For a brief moment, Holly thought she saw something human behind the rage, a flicker of the woman Amelia once was. But it was gone as quickly as it came. "You don't understand," Amelia whispered. "I've been here for so long, trapped, forgotten. I've watched the world move on while I rot in this place. I need justice, Holly, and if you won't help me..." The wind swelled violently. Holly felt herself being pulled towards the altar, towards the place where Amelia's rage had anchored her to the earth. She struggled, trying to resist the force, but it was too strong. Amelia's ghostly figure loomed over her, eyes burning with vengeance. Then I'll take it myself." With a deafening roar, the wind surged, and Holly was hurled backward. She gasped for air, pain shooting through her ribs as she struggled to her feet. But Amelia was gone. The church was silent once more. The ring lay at her feet, glowing faintly in the moonlight that filtered through the shattered windows. Holly picked it up, her hands trembling. She knew what she had to do. Amelia's wrath would not be satisfied with words or promises. There was only one way to break the cycle. She had to destroy the ring. Gathering her strength, Holly stumbled out of the church and made her way down to the rocky shore. The sea was rough, crashing against the cliffs in a relentless fury, as if the island itself was urging her on. Standing at the edge of the cliff, Holly held the ring over the churning waters below. Amelia's voice echoed in her mind, pleading, begging, cursing. But Holly knew she couldn't give in to the spirit's demands. If she did, the cycle of vengeance would continue, and more innocent lives would be lost. With a final breath, Holly hurled the ring into the sea. The wind died instantly. The storm clouds parted, revealing a sky filled with stars. And for the first time since Holly had arrived, the air felt still, peaceful. Amelia Blackwood was gone. Holly stood there for a long time, watching the waves crash against the shore. The ring was lost to the depths now, along with Amelia's rage and sorrow. But as Holly turned to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that the island still held secrets that might one day rise again from the deep. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please don't forget to like, and even better, like and subscribe. Thank you very much, and I hope you have had or have a great day.